Red Bull has confirmed that Liam Lawson is being demoted back to Racing Bulls, and Yuki Tsunoda is taking his place after fighting for so many years to be there next to Max Verstappen. Welcome to the Race for the Win podcast, where we talk about racing for the win and everything that comes with it. Big news today. As I've just explained, Liam Lawson is out. He's back in the sister team. Yuki's taken over. It's been a whirlwind of a week, hasn't it?
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about what happened, what led to the decision of Lawson being replaced, and was it fair to replace him after only 2 race weekends of the year?
Yeah, and then we're going to dig a little deeper, and we're going to speculate on who might actually be at fault. There isn't really fault around what's happened, but look, there are factors in place that have kind of affected Liam Lawson's performance in the first 3 races, if you include the sprint race. So we're going to talk about that. Yeah, let's just get straight into it. You know what? Before we get into it, I do want to give this a little bit of attention. Max Verstappen has just released his helmet for the Japanese Grand Prix, and we'll put the photos up over the screen right now. But doesn't it look like he's posing for his school photo? I frickin' love it. I frickin' love it. Max, when he does these things, he just looks like such a genuine guy.
But also, I think it's just very efficient. Like, let's just get this photo shoot done and dusted. These are my good poses. This is my good side. Boom, boom. Done. See you later. Simply lovely. Thank you.
Back to the sim racing.
Yeah.
And
I've
you know,
got better
F1 when he's got
to do. Thank you.
And F1 when he's got a bit of time to spare. You know. I love it. You know what? The helmet actually looks pretty good. It's simpler than we expected it to be. It's white, red like the Japanese flag. It's got some kind of cool stuff. Oh, it's got some like what's the Japanese the flowers, the Japanese flowers.
Oh, the blossom, cherry.
It looks like cherry blossoms at the back. It's very, very cool. Got the standard Heineken. Got the lion on the very top. Great looking helmet, Max. Let's move on to the bigger news. We'll just skim over what I just said. Look, Liam Lawson, we kind of all saw it coming, but we didn't. It was kind of speculation for a race. You know, after Australia happened, we're like, okay, he didn't have a lot of time in the car. He didn't do that great. Funny enough, he span out in exactly the same places I think Max span out. Like, if you put the videos on top of each other, it's exactly the same. Like, they hit exactly the same part of the wall. They span off at exactly the same part of the track. They made exactly the same steering wheel adjustments. Really interesting. But let's talk about this. How did it start?
So, I mean, going back to before the season, well, how far back do you want to go? I mean, obviously they decided to replace Sergio Perez at the end of last year. There was this huge kerfuffle within the media of like, who are they going to choose? So many people thought they were going to choose Yuki Tsunoda because 2025 is his 5th season, or would have been his 5th season with Racing Bulls. But then they decided to go for Liam because they said he was more consistent. He showed that he dealt with being under pressure better.
Yeah, I mean,
my English today is fantastic.
It's a good day.
Yeah.
Helmut Marko, literally, it was published today. He did an interview with OE24. Go and check it out. It's a great interview. It was published today, but it was actually the interview itself was carried out before the news was confirmed that Liam Lawson was out. And he said, basically, yeah, things are happening. You know, he kind of hinted at what was going on. And then he said the reason we didn't choose Yuki Tsunoda at the beginning was simply because he wasn't consistent. And I get it. The seasons before 2024, yes,
yeah,
fair. But 2024 was a great season, and even they were saying, yeah, he's really doing well. So why? I mean, I said this in the last podcast. I literally said it. Liam Lawson is going to be the worst rookie. I know he's technically not a rookie. Look, F1 calls him a rookie.
I think he's a rookie, but okay.
I define a rookie by a driver who has completed a season, which he hadn't. I don't know why they did that. I was rooting for Yuki to get a seat at Red Bull, but he didn't. And Lawson came in, and he had probably the worst. I mean, he literally came last in qualifying. He qualified 20th.
But he only had the 3 days of pre-season testing. Then Australia, he had issues on the car during practice,
Yeah,
so he
turbo blew or something.
didn't get the full practice session. He did then crash. However,
Yeah, but when Fernando
there was
Alonso
a lot
crashes
of
as well.
crashes. It was a wet race. It was carnage. Then to go straight from that double header into China, where it's a sprint race weekend, they have one practice session and then straight into it. Yes, he qualified last for both the sprint race and the Grand Prix.
Never done before in Red Bull, their 20-year history, by the way.
I know.
That is the first
I know.
time a Red Bull driver has qualified 20th
But
in 20 years.
But whoa. But go back to Nick de Vries. I know it's not Red Bull. It was, what was it at the time? AlphaTauri. I forget. But
So do they.
yeah. After 10 races, everyone was like, oh gosh, that's a bit harsh, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was 2.
2 races.
It's just, and it's not as though the Red Bull is winning 23 races a year. It's not the RB19 anymore. It's that Max is struggling with it. He's not very happy with the car. I mean, his version of struggling is very different, but you know what I mean.
His version of struggling is the bottom of the podium. We'll get into the
small step.
we'll get into the car
Yeah.
and the difficulties around the car later on in the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So what? Australia, like you said, he crashed straight away, almost. China was kind of equally as bad. He qualified badly. I think he finished 12th in China. Yes, but there were 3 disqualifications in front of him.
Yeah.
And even then, Max, who is superhuman, when Max isn't getting on the podium, there's an issue with the car. But let's talk about maybe the decision process behind this. Apparently, choosing Lawson was a unanimous decision at the end of 2023 to bring him into 2024. I'm not sure I quite believe that. I don't know if I do. It might also be contractual. I think there was something where if they didn't put Lawson in a full-time seat, they'd lose him. But I don't know for sure, but that's kind of what I've picked up along the way.
That would make sense as well, because it looked like he was going to get a full-time seat at the start of 2024. Because
Yes.
he'd done really well when he stepped in for Daniel Ricciardo, and then he didn't get the seat. So I think it was like, that would make sense to be like, okay, you're waiting a year, but you will get a seat at the end of that year. However, there was still a space available at Racing Bulls, because Isaac Hadjar is obviously new as well. So
That's where I would have put him.
well, that makes sense, because that's the whole point of having the sister team.
Yeah, exactly. Like, as soon as you bring in a rookie, put him in Racing Bulls. It's obviously an easier car. Have him alongside Hadjar, great driver by the way, really proven himself, especially in China, and then give him some experience, because he was obviously lacking experience. Like, he came in, he said straight away, he was like, I don't know what's going on. Like, the car is just all over the place. I think for China, they tried to dial out some of the oversteer that they dial into the car for Max. It's a very pointed front end, and they tried to dial that out. And then he was just complaining about understeer the whole race. And then finally, the tires kind of came up to temperature, and he said that the balance was great for a single lap. And then as soon as that lap was over, it went back to being an absolute lovely car again. And then even Max was struggling with the tires, and he's a 4-time champion now. Like, he's experienced, he knows how to he's been driving these RBs for a long time now. Like, there is something wrong with the car, but like I said, we'll get into that in a minute. Is it fair for Lawson to be dropped so early? That's the question, isn't it?
It depends on how it's been done. Face value, I think no. I think, you've got to give someone a decent amount of time to actually get to grips with the car. He, like I said, he didn't have that much testing time.
Don't mind me.
It is going to take some time to adjust to it, and that's just human. To do it this soon, I don't know. It feels like they've set him up to fail as well, because putting someone straight into Red Bull when he's effectively skipped over what many people view as the stepping stone to get to Red Bull, being Racing Bulls. There's so much media attention around you. There's so much hype. there's a lot of weight put on your shoulders straight away for your rookie season. It's just a bit intense. But if it was a joint decision, which they say it is, you never know, but they say it is, where Lawson also thinks he would feel better to kind of build himself up at Racing Bulls, then it's totally fair. But I can't see a driver just admitting that.
No.
On the back of nothing.
No, I agree. Like, when you're put into Red Bull, you're given a surge in confidence. You're good enough to be in a team that is at the top of the grid. Like, you know, yes, 2024 wasn't great, but 2023, hugely dominant. Like, saying a driver can come into that team makes them go, okay, I'm pretty good at this. And yes, all F1 drivers are kind of like that. They all know, you know, you interestingly, all of them say they are capable of winning a championship, and all of them say that is their dream. Yuki Tsunoda, not so much. His dream is to start a restaurant.
He's got big plans.
He
can see beyond his F1 future.
You know what? It's going to be like that Italian restaurant, isn't it? Next to, it's just outside Maranello. There's like a legendary Italian restaurant where all the Ferrari drivers go. He's going to be that, but for Honda. Or, you know, Aston Martin, Red Bull, whoever he retires from eventually. Another fun fact, actually, for you. This, Liam's, he left after 2 races fewer than Daniel Kvyat's 2016 demotion. He did have a full previous season, of course, but it just goes to show that, like, this is unprecedented, isn't it? And yes, it is as well the shortest stint in Red Bull driver history, which we already kind of touched on.
I mean, Red Bull have never been afraid of making a mid-season swap. The season's not even really started. It's like it's the first double-header of the year, and they're like, see ya.
Yeah, and the tracks that he hasn't driven on as well.
Yeah.
Like, it does seem so premature. But they obviously saw the Constructors' Championship melting away from them.
Yeah.
And I think they've just gone, oh no, we've made the wrong decision.
But there's also no guarantee that putting Yuki in that car is going to turn things around, because it's obviously a difficult car. So it just doesn't seem to make sense. It's just looks a bit messy from the outside.
It does.
And if you look in comparison to Mercedes, who Antonelli, they've done it in a different way, where they're not saying he's Lewis Hamilton's replacement, because obviously a rookie stepping into that role is very, very challenging. But from a public's point of view, you can't help but see it that way. But they've gone about it differently. They've given him as much testing as they possibly could, as much experience as they could. They kind of seem to be nurturing him a bit more than just throwing him in the deep end and being like, off you go, get podium, please, thank you.
They've also rebranded the team. Like, that was one thing that, you know, we all saw on the halo of Hamilton's Mercedes last year. It said something like, for a dream, you need a team, or something along those lines. And we were thinking, okay, yeah, it's like a celebration of Hamilton's time with the team, but actually it's not. It's to bring on Antonelli and to kind of almost rebrand, have a new message going into 2025. And I think, like you said, they've done it really brilliantly, creating a new era. George is now the team leader. So yeah, I think you're right. Like, bringing in a driver alongside Max Verstappen, it's plagued, isn't it? It's a seat that no one really wants. You know, Max is going to be the number 1 driver, which, you know, you go into expecting, obviously. But, I mean, this is what Christian Horner said anyway. He said, it's been difficult to see Liam struggle with the RB21 at the first 2 races, and as a result, we've collectively taken the decision to make an early switch. We came into the 2025 season with 2 ambitions: to retain the World Drivers' Championship and to reclaim the World Constructors' title. And this is purely a sporting decision. We acknowledge there's a lot of work to be done with the RB21, and Yuki's experience will prove highly beneficial in helping to develop the current car. Interesting. We welcome him to the team and are looking forward to seeing him behind the wheel of the RB21. That is interesting. I'll carry on with the quote in a second, but it's interesting that they say Yuki's experience will prove highly beneficial.
Did they not feel that way at the start of the year?
Exactly. What I mean, they're obviously going, oh, damage control.
Mm.
This is interesting as well. So the next line is, we have a duty of care to protect and develop Liam. And together we see that after such a difficult start, it makes sense to act quickly so Liam can gain experience. What are they doing? What are they doing? They're going back on everything they've done over the first 2 races. They have a team to gain experience. It's called Racing Bulls. Yuki's been there for 4 odd years. You know, it's time for them to say, I know they're trying to kind of protect themselves and defend their decision, but they made the wrong decision. To be honest, they just need to come out and say it, because that would make Liam feel better. You know, Liam is still their driver. Liam is still a driver that might eventually make it to Red Bull. You know, after the where was it? There was something that Mercedes did. It was after George's disqualification last year at Spa. Toto wasn't going, well, you know, there's something wrong with the car. He just said, yeah, we made a mistake. We're going to learn from it. This is what Christian has to do. You know, this is take responsibility. Christian has done a lot of things over his Red Bull tenure, and he needs to now start, you know, it's not always something else's fault, or it's not always, oh, happy, whatever. He needs to take responsibility and be like, yeah, that was a bad decision from me. That was a bad decision from Helmut Marko and a bad decision from the team. Anyway, let's. We'll talk about that more when we talk about who's kind of not to blame, but where the fault lies for the most part later on. Let's talk about Tsunoda. Look, he's been absolutely brilliant this season so far. He struggled in China, but that was because his car had damage. But he has just become a more mature driver, hasn't he? He's become a driver which you kind of assume would be. I mean, he's like we said, he's been there 4 years now. This is his 5th year. He looks like and sounds like a driver that should be in the leading team.
Yeah, it's for me personally, he was the clear
number one.
Number one,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, the clear
choice
for the seat when they were talking about potentially replacing Sergio Perez. So it just makes sense, and he has matured so much as a driver, and he's shown it with all of these, again, driver changes over the last few years with AlphaTauri, VCarb, Racing Bulls. He has consistently outperformed each of those teammates when they've rotated in around him.
Yeah, you're right. Even Daniel Ricciardo, who kind of everyone had kind of high expectations for, Yuki's like, nope, another one bites the dust.
Yeah.
So, okay, Yuki's going into Red Bull. How is he gonna fare? Let's talk about now the performance of this car. The faster a car gets, usually, the harder it is to drive in F1. The aerodynamics are more on the edge. The operating window is smaller, but the potential is higher. Max Verstappen, like we said, an experienced driver, is struggling to drive the car, struggling to get it into the performance window. We saw China, the one stop. He really struggled on the mediums. He struggled to get those tyres into the right performance window. There's something happening. Whether it's the loss of the Adrian Newey effect or, you know, Helmut Marko in the OE24 interview, he was like, yeah, we're kind of missing a Newey here. You know, like, is there something happening in Red Bull? I think the question is, have they moved too far to Max Verstappen? That is the question, because he likes a pointed car, like we said. Have they moved too far that even Max can't control it?
Potentially. I mean, there was always going to be a bit of a transitional phase after Newey left. So that is understandable. There's obviously issues with it.
Yeah. So even, look, Max has said, okay, because from Max's perspective, he wants a calm working environment. That means a teammate he can rely on, and a teammate that doesn't keep swapping every 2 minutes, or every 2 races rather. So he's looking for a number of things, but the main thing that kind of brings all this to him is a car that's more drivable. The Racing Bulls have it. You know, maybe they need to communicate a bit more and be like, okay, what's going on there? Like, what have you got going on with the floor or whatever? You know, and it's getting to the point where you think if Max leaves, if he hasn't got the performance from the car this season, and he goes, you know what, I'm going to go to Mercedes or Ferrari or whatever. This is all. Yeah, this is
Cadillac.
Yeah, this is all stupid. But what if he does say, I'm not happy, he reportedly has a clause in his contract that says if he doesn't believe that he can get a championship-winning car from Red Bull, then he has the right to leave. And Helmut Marko would probably follow him. What happens with Red Bull? Because now they've got no driver that can actually control this car. Max is off, I don't know, let's say with Mercedes, with their excellent powertrains in 2026 or whatever. Red Bull are suddenly a backmarker team.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big fall, and it's because they've moved this evolution of their car so far to the left, or so far to Max Verstappen, that no one else can do it. And now Max can't do it. They need to bring it back, and they really need to sort this out. Maybe 2026 will be a blank slate for them.
Yeah, probably. I think it's like what I was saying earlier. That's why there's no guarantee that putting Yuki in the car now is going to actually change much for the team in Japan. Hopefully, side note, it doesn't set him up for failure in front of his home race, because he's been driving really well so far this season.
That was my next question. Is he being set up for failure?
I think they all are. No, I don't. No.
What do you mean all?
I don't know. Maybe I'm having a bad day. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I think it's easy to think this is great for Yuki because it's what he's wanted for so long. But the Racing Bulls seems to be a much easier car to handle right now than the Red Bull.
Yes.
So
it's so difficult with these
I know.
names,
That's why I'm slowing down. So he's probably not going to get as great a performance out of the car as he would have in the Racing Bulls, and also he's going in with no testing time in the RB21.
That's right.
It isn't a sprint race weekend. Whoa, mouthful. So he will have 3 testing sessions, but beyond that, there's not anything else he can do other than just be thrown straight in and hope for the best.
That's right. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually finishes lower than the Racing Bulls.
Potentially.
I would like. Obviously, I want him to finish higher, but the car is. We can see what's wrong with the car. Like, the car is too spiky. The Racing, but he's used to the Racing Bulls. That's the car he's been helping develop for however long. I wouldn't be surprised if he drops, and that could ruin his performance, his confidence. I think that could potentially set him up for failure. I really do.
I think that's maybe, again, looking from the outside, what Red Bull lacks partly is like they have this whole kind of culture where they're not afraid to get rid of a driver really quickly. So that puts so much pressure on them. So then if they do kind of not get the performance that is kind of expected of them in a couple of races, suddenly there's all this extra pressure thinking, oh, well, now I'm going to be embarrassed publicly and gotten rid of. And that's only going to make someone perform worse because there's extra pressure and extra media attention, everything that they're dealing with. It's not nurturing them to get the best performance out of them long term.
That's right. I think Williams right now is an example of success in that area. Carlos moves from Ferrari to Williams, different car, different powertrain, different. Obviously, it's a massively different team, even in a different country. So but what they're doing is James Vowles released a video recently, the Vowles verdict. Bloody love that man. He just goes, look, Carlos isn't there yet, but he will get there, but we're not rushing him. He's got to settle in. He's got to settle into the car, settle into the processes, settle into the, how everything works. This is a good thing about it being 2025. This is kind of like a write-off year for a lot of the teams, and a lot of the teams we'll see quite quickly the teams kind of drop out of this development race. But it's not just a race in car development, it's a race in driver development. And there are sacrifices that have to be made. Williams understands that sacrifice. They are sacrificing the car for next year as well. But they are also realizing, look, this year might be a bit difficult because Carlos Sainz doesn't know what he's doing in regards to being part of the team.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing with Lewis. We've always said Lewis going to Ferrari. 2025 is going to be a learning year for him. Yes, he won the sprint, which was like surprising, but we've seen, but with several disqualifications and other things going on, we know, it is taking time for him to settle into Ferrari.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a very different team to Mercedes. Red Bull, I was expecting to, like you said, they do have this fast turnover. There is pressure to perform straight away. But if they're not putting Liam Lawson in Racing Bulls, so he can have that, it's almost like a halfway house, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's how I kind of think about it. But then surely they should be thinking, okay, in that case, if he's just going straight into Red Bull, he's going to need some time to adapt. Christian Horner himself has said, Max wants a super strong front end and razor sharp turn in, and that naturally makes the rear end more unstable, which for most drivers kills confidence. Horner said that. That was a quote. So why is he putting Liam and Helmut? Why are they putting that driver in that position? I don't know. It almost seems political to me. It almost seems like if I'm a pessimistic person.
You are. Right?
It almost feels like they did it on purpose. They didn't. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, but it kind of feels like
don't
it.
sue me.
Yeah. Let's round this off.
Mm-hmm.
The big question is, where does the fault lie? There's not really fault in the standard definition of it, is there? This is just F1. It is crazily, like, 2 races is very, very quick. But I believe Christian Horner needs to sort his team out. Obviously, he's responsible for everything that's happening because he's the team leader. But I do think actually a lot of it lands on Helmut Marko. Helmut's like, there's a lot of back and forth between Marko and Horner. And, there are reports of them having an argument after China. But Helmut kind of has to shoulder some of this blame because he's the one that brings up the rookies. What is he doing to give them that confidence in, not necessarily the team, because you do have confidence, kind of, in the team. But what's he doing to give rookies confidence and to allow them to fade into driving in RB? It is such a different... Lawson didn't have any experience in that car, like you said.
Yeah.
He had, the first, the second Grand Prix was a sprint weekend. The first Grand Prix, he lost out because of turbo failure. He had next to no time in it. Yuki, I don't get the logic behind it.
No.
Marko should have stepped in and gone, he's going to fail. Straight away, he's going to fail. Because it's so unfair for him to be put into a car like that straight away.
Yeah. So either don't put him into Red Bull straight away, or have things in place where he is given time and all the support he needs to build to where he needs to get to. But do you think, because obviously, like you said, Helmut is in charge of the driver development program, do you think them bringing in Daniel Ricciardo kind of skewed their whole process? Because it was very clear that they go through the academy, then they get a seat in AlphaTauri, Racing Bulls, V-Carb, Toro Rosso, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
So they get a seat there when they're deemed good enough, and then they work their way up and hopefully eventually get a seat with Red Bull or a seat with another team. But because they really wanted to bring Daniel Ricciardo back because of everything else that he brings to the team,
social media support,
marketing, everything,
yeah,
that does bring
there was a value.
a different value. So they brought him back almost like a step down, which then probably created a backlog of all these other drivers that are being promised things that now suddenly at the end of 2024 they're like, well, we need to give Isaac a seat and we need to give Liam a seat.
That's genius.
Plus Yuki Tsunoda was like, guys,
hello.
like, I've been here a while, I'm not supposed to be here for 5 years. Like,
I think you're right. That is actually, because we always thought bringing back Daniel Ricciardo is a move. Like, that is, he'd kind of lost it by that point. I think you might be right. That might have skewed the whole thing.
Because they were thinking, okay, it's a temporary measure, bring him back, that obviously then didn't happen, and then they're probably thinking, well, what do we do now? 'Cause
Yes,
it's a bit of a shit show.
you're right. You're right.
Excuse the French.
I think no, you're right. I think you're entirely right. That is a really interesting way of thinking about it, because that did seem like a bit of a. It was almost like a bit of a PR stunt. Like
A little bit.
Red
It
Bull,
makes sense.
it made complete sense. It made complete sense. But you know, Red Bull, especially with Drive to Survive, they've been kind of made to look like the bad guys. Like Horner even said, like in one of the episodes, he was like, "Oh, you're gonna make me look like the villain again," or something like that. And they're like, "No." So bringing in Ricardo with his big smile and his, you know, social media savvy personality, it kind of worked for them, didn't it? Yeah, so good point. Let's move on to the car. I think that's obviously like the biggest issue right now. Who's behind that? Is Adrian Newey just going, "Ha! I knew they'd do that."
Well, he did say in it was in a I forget who it's with now, so I feel really bad. We'll pop it on the screen.
We'll text at the bottom.
So he said before the season that he noticed a few things on the car, and it straight away was like wrong decision. But obviously at that point he wasn't allowed to be involved with anything.
He was gardening.
He was gardening, so he could see that there was some cracks forming. Thinking, oh, I wouldn't make that decision myself. And then obviously, maybe, most likely, I mean, I would say he's right. I can't imagine a situation where he would be wrong.
I agree.
But yeah, I think, like I said before, there's always going to be a bit of a transition when you have someone like Adrian Newey in your team, and then suddenly you don't, and it didn't seem to be a decision that Red Bull anticipated. Although you know he is six, he was at least 65 when he made the announcement. He might be 66 now, but you'd be thinking maybe he's going to go into retirement. But I don't think they were necessarily expecting it to happen. So then I do think that's going to have an effect. As much as they say it won't, I think it will.
Yeah, I mean, he was like the North Pole of that car, wasn't he? Like, you know, everything is drawn towards his path. It's his journey. And I know he was saying, "Oh well, you know, I mostly kind of focused on the suspension and stuff." Yes, but the suspension is literally like the core of the aerodynamics of the car now. So the whole car was centered around his, like I said, his path, his journey. When he left, it was one Pierre's responsibility to come in and go, "Okay, what's going on?" Like obviously he was, you know, highly involved with the design, but now he has to be the North Pole. They're two different people. Adrian Newey obviously had an idea of where the car was going because each car was an evolution. It wasn't a complete kind of innovation. I know, well, 2023 had the interesting side. 2024 had the interesting side pods. But, you know, it was kind of like it was always building upon that same Newey concept. And now it, like we've said, it's just gone too far. It is centered far too much around Max Verstappen, and that is the main issue. Max has always said that he will always drive to get to be as fast as possible. Basically, he has said, I quote, "I just say design me the fastest car, and I'll drive around that." That is what they've done. But it's now getting a little too sketchy.
Yeah.
And we've seen that, you know, when Max, like we've said, when Max can't drive it, when Max is struggling with it, something is wrong.
Yeah.
The next question is, what do they do? What do Red Bull do now? 2026 coming, the new regulations next year. Do they give up? Max was asked this. Christian was asked this by Sky Sports. Ted Kravitz.
You're so much better at remembering these things than
I think I think so. I think it was Ted Kravitz. Do they now just look at 2026? You know, I think they've kind of established themselves as top four, definitely top four, but like lower end of top four. Are they just going, okay, fine, we'll sit here for a bit. It'll be similar to 2023, 2024. Oh my God, my years are all over the place. I'm still not in 2025 yet. You know, we'll just sit here kind of like we expect to be. Like Max is just going to do his thing. Yuki can hopefully back him up when possible. But let's focus on 2026. Maybe. Christian was like, it's only been 2 races. Tell that to Liam. But like, you know, Christian's been like, it's only 2 races, let's not give up just yet. So I do see them giving up before too long. And they just need to go, okay, development of the car, we're going to stop it here. It's just going to be a crap year. Let's get top half of the constructors' standings. Let's get Max at least top 5 drivers' championships. Come back with a really, really good car in 2026.
Imagine trying to sell that to Max, though. Like, at this point,
That's what I'm saying.
We don't know how much of the rumours are true, but there's got to be something in there where he, like, how do you motivate Max to stay with the team or to care if he's not winning races and fighting for the championship? And the whole reason why they're saying that they've made the decision with Liam Lawson is because it's a sporting decision and they want to still fight for the drivers and constructors championship. So then to say that but give up on the development seems
I don't know, because
wrong.
all they're thinking right now is we need to keep Max. That should be the number one priority in their minds, because if they lose Max, they lose a fast car. Like, that is the issue. Max has a baby on the way. His priority is not going to be F1 for that much longer. It's already fading with all of this stuff about the swearing ban and the FIA getting so uptight about everything. His interest in the sport, he's got 4 world titles. If he's not fighting for a 5th, is he gonna care that much about racing? He's got so much else going on. He needs to be fought for. And if I was Christian at this point, I'm like, okay, Max, this week, this season, it's not going to be so good. But 2026, you know, we're going to come back and we're going to have a great car that's going to win for you. That's what he needs to be doing, I think.
I get that, but also I think even getting him to wait till 2026, like saying to someone 2 races into a 24 race season, by the way, we've just decided that the car's going to be crap for the whole year. Can you just hold on?
There's a little longer. I don't say right now. They don't make big decisions like that after 2 races.
No, who would do that?
Give them 4 or 5 races, then they're going to be like, yeah, okay, let's move on to 2026.
Yeah.
And then
be tactical about it. If the lower they finish in the constructors' standings,
the more wind tunnel they get.
Wind tunnel time they get. So maybe it's all based on that.
It's all a game of chess.
Although also, surely Max is he gets a bonus if he wins the championship. So he's thinking, mate, I've got a new private jet I've got to pay for. Like,
it's a much more economical private jet. He's paid it off now, probably.
He's got a jet and a yacht. Like, you know.
He's doing fine.
Or he's spent all his money and he really needs... Come on, pray for Max.
Max has to buy a sim setup for his new baby.
He's got to buy a little mini... I was going to say Honda... But what will their
Ford Lightning?
Yeah, what will their
company
car
cars
be next year?
Ford Mondeo, I think.
Or Mustang.
Ford Focus. Yeah. Look, I think this is a massive game of chess. Red Bull's playing a game of chess. Max Verstappen, he's going to be playing a game of chess. But in this story, we are butt pawns. So look, we'll leave it here. How long was I thinking of that? A long time, about 37 minutes. Look, we're going to leave it here. Let us know down in the comments if you think this was crazy, if you think this was a good idea. I'm really interested. I've read a lot on Twitter and Facebook and Reddit and whatever, the opinions of what people are thinking. Look, it's been an exciting season so far, hasn't it? It's going to be a very close season. Hopefully, we'll see a little bit of car development in the coming weeks. Let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy it. And look, when Liam's going to be doing better now, he's in Racing Bulls. So look, best of luck to Liam. Best of luck to Yuki. Very excited about Japan. See you soon.